we could just buy bacon, but it's not our bacon. Bacon sandwich for the bar menu, actually, it's here on the back of the beer mat. We make the bread, we make the butter, we make the bacon. You choose red or brown sauce. So this is a bit like the kitchen. You challenge everything. We're not just following like a sheep. And I think that's where my time with Heston at Fat Duck, 20 years. Ultimately, when you're a chef, you try and cook food that you believe people will enjoy, but you also have got to love it as well.
Ash, thank you so much for doing this, mate. I'm hugely excited, hugely grateful. There's so much to explore, and it's gonna be great fun. I think we've got a nice selection of dishes coming as well, which we can use as a launch pad to discuss creativity. So thanks for doing this, mate.
No worries at all. Pleasure.
I want to start, and I think we were saying before we hit record is I wanted to really get into creativity today. Yeah. I'm obsessed with creativity, and I think what you did at the Fat Duck, what you're doing here, is just a great sort of manifestation of creativity. And what I want to start with is people who push the boundaries and push the creative boundaries into sort of new territories that no one's ever explored before. And I think the person who does this in film is Quentin Tarantino. And I think his films are so fucking wild and wacky. I think wacky was a word that was synonymous with what you guys were creating at the Fat Duck. And he's got a quote, I listened to him on Joe Rogan podcast the other day, and he was basically saying the pen is an antenna to God.
Right.
And basically by that, and when he says God, it was in the context of creativity.
Yeah.
So he was like, when he starts writing, he believes that creativity is like sort of coming through him, and he's creating something with that. And I do a lot of writing. I write every single morning. We've been smashing your coffee recently, and a lot of techno in my ears. And I feel like sometimes I feel like you are plugging into some sort of creative thing out there, and it's coming through you. So, at your time at the Fat Duck, where would you say that creativity was coming from? First question. And was like sort of your knife in your pan like almost like an antenna to sort of the gastronomic gods, if you want to call it that?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think, going right back to day one.
Yeah.
I mean, I came from a rural village in Dorset.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that was, the creative sort of hub of what I've gained over my time, in the kitchen. But when I went to Bray for the very first time for dinner, and I'd read about the Fat Duck in Food Illustrated before it became Waitrose magazine. And I saw these 5 guys, well, it's actually 4 guys and a girl, in a photograph, and they just looked cool. They looked like slightly rebellious. It wasn't your traditional kitchen sort of outfit with hats and all white and sparkling. They were just these people that looked like they were on a mission. The food that Heston was cooking at that time was unlike anything else I'd seen in this country, and all the chefs I was following as a young, budding chef that wanted to go into this. His was sort of bourgeois Lyonnaise cooking, but with a sort of...
When you say bourgeois Lyonnaise...
It's got a rusticness to it,
right.
So if I said, a piece of roast cod with licorice, lemon, and mint powder on top, with pea puree, lentils with balsamic vinegar, and... a braised coxcomb, the bit from the chicken's head.
Yeah.
That was just like, to me, I was just like, this is amazing. Like this, I had to go there. And when I went there, it's all about the feeling you get when you connect to something, or what people are trying to achieve and what they give off. And he was a man at the start of a long mission that I don't think anyone knew which way that was going, It was very exploratory, it was very pioneering, and there was this sort of no fear attitude to that journey that started for me in 1999 when I joined. Quite quirky, bold, rustic food, but really interesting. Something I'd never seen before. Never seen a book with this stuff in. That was the time when the really cool things were the cappuccino mushroom soup, with frothy soup with a bit of cream on top so it looked like a coffee. That's the sort of time where Heston was just on another level of creativity. So I think when you connect with someone like that has that that constant, insatiable quest for finding out new things and connecting in the same way as I connected to other areas, whether it's psychologists or touch and feel or professor of smell or crunch or, I mean, so many things. When you can tap into those things and that is like your antenna to those other areas where you go, well, actually, I could probably use part of that intel to help me achieve something at the table that is going to have a greater impact than just a plate of food. You know, just think about all of these. We say multisensory now. That wasn't around back then. Now, it was there, but we didn't realize what that really meant at that time. So by working with these different fields, using all those senses that I just described, then that whole multisensory thing really kicked off. And, you know, it was an amazing journey.
And where would that sort of those ideas and come with that? What I'm trying to get to is that, as I said, I totally get the antenna thing of like, right, I'm going to go and speak to this feel and touch person or this psychologist. But in that time, as you're in the fat duck and you're in that kitchen, and as I said, I want to get really into your creativity, Ash. Like I know Heston's amazing and what he's done, but I really want to get into your creativity because ultimately you were sort of so instrumental in that place. So are you sitting there and the idea just comes to you out of the blue, or are you with the team purposely going on the quest to find ideas? Like, is there any sort of examples to sort of bring that to life?
Yeah, I mean, there's another really important part of this sort of setup is you have creativity, and then you have what a restaurant does on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. You have deadlines. You have 2 of those a day in the case of the Fat Duck.
Yeah.
You have 45 people coming for dinner and lunch, and you have to be ready. So you have immense practicality and military operation, right? Massively high labor. But then on the other side, you have this huge creative side of the 2 things. And you have this, first of all, it's a massive team, you know, of brilliant, diverse people. And in my early years, when someone is not quite like you in the kitchen, or you think that you need everyone to do what you do and how you think. And then over time, you realize, and we work with different performance coaches, and it becomes about the diversity of thinking, diversity of knowledge.
Yeah.
And also what crazy little idea or little thing comes into the pot. You need that diversity, but somebody has to harness this thing, right?
Sure.
So you have to allow ideas to be free to be explored and fail. But then it's no good at making something that you just cannot produce into the restaurant. And there are times where it doesn't make it to a restaurant because it's completely impractical or it never works, right? So you've got creativity and you've got delivery, military delivery. And you'll have some people that can sit only on this side.
Yeah.
And you've got some people that can only sit on this side. But I think where I found my niche was being able to flex between the 2. And there's a really nice tension between those 2.
Yeah.
But you have to work really hard at managing yourself to allow yourself to go to this side. But then actually over time we have to be able to deliver it over here.
Yeah.
See what I mean? So wherever there's really nice tension in anything, like whether it's movies or music or art, or if you don't have that tension, you don't really get anything really brilliant. If that makes sense.
Oh my God, that's so good.
So you can have this kind of flex between the 2. And I understand some people can't get out of this bit. They are the most incredible creative people. But actually, until you can make it into something or take it forward or hand it over to someone who can make it into reality. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because creativity is not just about wacky ideas and really cool things. It's about actually solving a problem.
Okay, because that's what I was going to say. So what is your definition of creativity? Is solving a problem? Like, go deeper into that.
Well, I suppose solving a problem is maybe not. It's not relevant to food in a way that, unless it's, I really want to do this, but this is incredibly difficult. How on earth are we going to solve the problem to be able to deliver it? But actually, creativity can be really, really simple. Finding a better way of doing something, you know, that's just as creative as a crazy idea that, you know, might become one of the most famous dishes in gastronomic restaurants.
Yeah.
So I think ideas come from many places. You get inspired by different stuff, ingredients and the sort of acorn of an idea might stem from one single ingredient that we really want to use.
Yeah.
And then you create around that thing. How do we show this in its proper way? But no dish was ever the same process, was never the same length.
Yeah.
We never really set ourselves deadlines on the creative side.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes, and I guess big companies rather than restaurants will say, I've got a deadline on the 20th and we need to come up with all these ideas and we're going to launch on the 20th. Well, things are ready when they're ready. If you can afford to operate like that. That makes sense?
Complete sense. I want to go in how you swim, as you personally, Ash, swam from across the two sort of the poles between insane creativity and sort of wackiness, and I think it's questioning things, to this military kind of organization. Like, is there an example of an idea that started out as like an acorn of sort of wackiness, and how you pulled it through the sort of and then pulled it through and then created something that's actually on the customer's table at the Fat Duck? Because I think creativity is just, it is. I think people can get so caught up in the creative side that they're going around like, and I'm a bit like this, just coming up with fucking ideas the whole time. It's like, can you actually execute on it? And it's that tension, and the tension's where the genius is. There's too many people, if you're too militaristic with it, and this is basically what Rory Southern's whole thing is you can't use the finance team to solve fucking problems. So they got no sort of intuition. But then if you're too wacky and you're going around, gobbledygook coming up with ideas, it doesn't work. So if there's an example of how you've pulled that through, I'd be fascinated to explore that.
I mean, there was so many. I mean, each dish is really, they're so different in their journey, where they started to where they got to. So, I mean, if I took meat fruit, for example, that we did for Dinner by Heston, the restaurant in Knightsbridge.
Yep.
The parfait had started life probably 20 years before Fat Duck. Because a recipe starts and it gets evolved, and you learn and you pass on and you gather that information. We then made that our own in terms of how we wanted it to taste. It's the balance of foie gras to chicken liver. It's the amount of salt, the type of salt, the alcohol reduction, the brand of spirits that we're putting into our alcohol reduction. Not just buying anything and just that red port and that cognac. It was these specific things. So that simple parfait that played its part in a dish that Heston... I never actually ate this first dish, actually. It's pre me going there. And... So
just for listeners, what the meat fruit is...
I'm jumping around it.
No, it's all good, mate.
So meat fruit is from our restaurant that we created in London, in the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. And it's basically... It looks like a mandarin. Mm-hmm. So it's got an orange skin, it's pitted, and inside is a chicken liver and foie gras parfait. Little leaf on top, served with grilled bread. It's insane. It blows people's minds. It's amazing. But it's really simple. There's two things that are on the plate. It's parfait and your condiment, which is the jelly around the outside. Rewind where I think Heston went to, what was it? Not Girardet. It was, the name will come to me. Very progressive French chef. And he had a dish of pigeon jelly that was spooned out onto the plate with pickled vegetables, all sorts, and then this crab cream, right? Nuts for 1980s. And he took that as inspiration to create a dish where it was a little cup, and it had pea puree on the bottom, a pigeon consommé with langoustine or crab cream on top, and then a little rocher, or a little oval thing of that chicken liver parfait. So this is, an evolution of over 30 years, really, to get to that point. And then there was some TV program filming going on. There was Feast, which was the historical series. We had Little Chef going on, which I got dragged into. And they did these historical meat fruits where the Victorians loved to serve stuff that looked like something else, but it was in fact something completely misleading, but delicious at the same time. So this is the tension between taking from the old, inspired by the old, bringing it forward, but it has to taste good. Everything has to be about flavour first, which I think that is number one in my head. It's got to taste good. It's a drink, whatever it is. he said to me one day, they'd made all these different fruits, so plums and grapes and orange and blah, blah, blah.
Who said this to you? Heston?
Heston, yeah. But they'd made them out of like quite hard things, like rillette that was, incredibly... So it's like confit meat and then mixed down with the fat. So it's almost like a patty that you could spread on, or a terrine that they've moulded into a round instead of, it being served as a slice. So they're quite easy to handle. He said to me one day, he's like, when we were working on the concept for dinner, he said, it'd be great to get this parfait into a meat fruit. It'd be amazing if it was mandarin, because we're going into mandarin. I was like, wow. So I'm on this side now, my delivery side of my head, going, Christ, that's going to be quite a tall order. We're going to be doing 300 covers a day, but high level.
And it was
cooking.
A tall order because it was so hard to get.
Technically, to get something really soft and delicious like a parfait, that when you serve a parfait in a restaurant, it's incredibly smooth, and you can't just manhandle it into many different. You can't just freeze it with no consequence. You can't just mold it with no consequence. You can't heat it. And it go back to what it was. So what I mean? It's a very delicate thing. So I was like, oh, blimey, that's going to be quite difficult. But actually, do you know what? Leave it with us for a couple of weeks. And we thought about it, and we just started trial and error. And I think we can do this. And then we ended up with the rounded parfait with no detrimental effect to the texture or flavour whatsoever. And we then started making this mandarin jelly, and we wanted the gel to melt like a gelatine gel, not like a modern seaweed gel that's very... it doesn't melt in the same way. So when you put a gelatine thing in your mouth, it unravels itself and melts very slowly, and it's got a lovely texture to it. Whereas a seaweed gel is much more hard and more like a structure if you look at it under a microscope, rather than tangled up little bits of gelatine that form the gel.
Yeah.
And we ended up with these things that we were calling meat fruit at the time, and some were really, really shiny like this glass, and others had the holes like the mandarin. And we were like, oh, which one do we prefer? And I was like, well, it's kind of a bit irrelevant, because actually I've absolutely no idea why that one's shiny and that one's pitted. So we had two outcomes to choose from, but we didn't know how...
So when you say one was pitted, as in, sorry.
So if you look at an orange, you've got all the little holes, the little pits in the skin. So it's like orange skin.
Yeah.
And then we had one that was really super shiny, like a glass,
Almost like a fake fruit sort of thing.
Yeah, it looked really quite shiny and fake, right?
Interesting, yeah. And you had no idea why, what...
No idea. So we had to then just work out what actually happens. And it turns out, in order to make the meat fruit, we had to freeze the ball of parfait. And you freeze it at -40. And then we dip it into the jelly at 38 degrees, held in a water bath. And you would do one dip. And what would happen is the gel on the first one would start to freeze like frost on your ice on your windscreen in the morning. So you put it into some polystyrene, it would frost up and go really frosty. But if you dipped it too quickly before the frost had affected the texture of that gel, right, then it would be really, really shiny. If you let it frost up, you've disrupted the surface of the first gel. So when you re-dip it the second time, so you've got enough gel, then you get the little pits. But if you dip it too quickly, it'll be really, really super smooth and shiny.
Sure.
But the reason we were doing two dips is because we wanted the right amount of gel on the outside, which is your condiment, instead of having, a chutney or a fruit condiment to go with your parfait. The right amount of condiment was on the outside of the parfait. So every time you put it onto the toast, you had the right balance of parfait, mandarin flavored gel.
Yeah.
There's no real simple answer here. It's a very complicated trial and error thing.
It's beautiful, and my brain's sort of bubbling with curiosity here. But I think what I love is as we say, these sort of the dichotomy of huge creativity and sort of military, and actually the link, I suppose, is, does this solve a problem?
Yep.
Amazing book actually called The War of Art, which is basically almost the same thing as the war is the military side.
Yep.
The art is all these crazy creative ideas. And he basically says, when you're creating art, and it's for writers, it's for anyone who's doing any sort of creative pursuit, is you're going to face this thing called resistance, which is and you need some sort of military war to bludgeon your way through that resistance, and then that's when you solve the problem. That's almost the creative panacea or nirvana that I suppose everyone's hoping for. And I suppose the resistance of what you were saying there is like, well, first resistance is Heston saying we need to fit this in a bloody Mandarin. Then you've got the dipping and all this stuff, and that's resistance. And I suppose that's you leading and pulling people from these creative ideas through to this military. Right, we need to get this over the line. Has there been an example? We can go all over. It could be here. It could be like there's no sort of there's no chronological order to any of this, where the resistance has been so strong, and you're like, how the fuck do we get like? We've got these beautiful creative ideas. We needed to get it on the menu. We're just going through hell on earth. Yeah. It's the whole Winston Churchill thing. When you're going through hell, just keep going. And I'd just love to go into that. And then you manage to solve it, because I think this is important, not just for restaurants, but for business. For life. Like creativity is the answer to everything, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, if I go back to when we opened dinner, for example, so we came from Fat Duck, so you had 45, 50 chefs cooking for 40 odd people 5 days a week. Right? Fuck. Yeah, that's crazy.
Then you'd have a ton of front of house staff, sommeliers. So you're looking at probably near on 100 staff to fill the whole week. To take that sort of intensity of attention to detail to an a la carte restaurant in London to do 125 for lunch, 175 for dinner, 7 days a week in a hotel, 365 days a year. How do we take these principles, this ethos, to food here? And there was quite a few examples where, especially in pastry, we are flavour and texture and delivery of something first. Invariably, you do have things that are quite hard to achieve. So you end up with a lot of waste. So, for example, we had one dish that was a Sussex pond pudding. So it was a bit of like suet pastry, but it was baked. And inside was a lemon caramel. And it turned out it's absolutely delicious. However, we'd have to cook 3 to serve 1.
Because?
It would break, it would explode. The caramel gets so hot, it bursts the pastry. You put it in the bowl, next minute it's cracked. So it was incredibly volatile to deliver. Sure. And you just look at it and go, we can't, there's 2 things. You've got the cost of 3 into 1, or you've got the labour of making 3 things to serve 1. Where do the other 2 go? People either eat them or they go in the bin. It's just not sustainable to just go, we're just going to do this. So you have to work out a way to achieve that with much, much, much more economic sense than cook 3, serve 1. Same with the chocolate bar we had. It was had ginger and passion fruit inside, flocked with chocolate. It's a 300 cover restaurant, so it's not. These are things that you normally find in 40, 50 cover restaurants. Get to the end of the night and they're actually a recipe that could not go in the fridge. So you might have 20 left over. And you go, the amount of labour in this is insane. Mm. We need to work out a way, solve the problem of making sure we achieve the texture, the flavour, everything. But we can't be putting 20 in the bin every night. This is just madness. But at the same time, you can't run out. Do you see what I mean?
God, yeah. This is resistance.
Yeah.
So the resistance wall that you're banging your head against.
Yeah.
How did you solve that with either the lemon and caramel dish or the chocolate and ginger passion fruit? Just
through thinking logically, how can we go about this? And that's as a group, you've got really talented people that are.
What did you actually do to sort of solve it?
I think in the end, it was more about working on the texture of the pastry,
right?
Not overheating. So we'd actually have to pre-cook some of the outside first before we put the inside in. So it's like a double cook method. So it's a bit more labour, but it's actually a lot less waste. But you have to, and then, this is a sort of hedonistic kitchen way of doing stuff. We're just talking about a little bit wastage and labour, but then you've got someone with a spreadsheet banging on the table saying, well, why is the GP at 67 and not 68 or 70 instead of 71? And you know it's because of this, because you record your wastage. Well, what are you going to do about it? So we come back to this thing about when you've got this element and that pressure of a big national, multinational hotel group on your case. You know, so it's a very, very intricate balance of doing everything you want to do and it be the very best you can do, and actually making sure everyone's happy along the way. But that's creativity to a point. Everyone thinks of creativity as amazing, wacky ideas and fun, you know, just brilliant stuff. Like the art in here, you know, it's just fun and exploratory and new, and I really love that. Exciting.
Yeah, creativity to me is, I think there's a Bruce Lee quote, which is like, be like water, which is like, I think like you basically say the rock's in your way, you sort of you go around it. And I think the more creative you are, but linchpinning it on that whole thing of, does this solve a problem, is just genius. The one thing I wanted to ask you is kind of, so I don't know if you like Wu-Tang Clan. I listen to a lot of Wu-Tang Clan. Anyway, 90s sort of rap band who, they really, again, sort of pushed the boundaries with rap, really.
Yeah.
And what they did is a few things. So they had RZA, who was like the lead geezer, basically, and he was a guy who would have all these. There was 11 of them in this band.
Yeah.
And they're all super, super creative. But when they rap, they each put their, you can, like when someone like Ghostface Killer raps, like you can really feel his voice, his unique voice. When another guy called Old Dirty Bastard. I mean,
I've heard of him.
Yeah, Old Dirty Bastard. When he comes in on a song, like, you know it's him.
Right. Yeah.
But what RZA said, I don't know which podcast this was on, but he was like, no, it was on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was asking him, was like, what comes first, the lyrics or the beat? Mm-hmm. And in my head, I was like, well, like, obviously the lyrics would come first, and then you'd put a beat over it, right? Yeah. And what he's saying is, no, actually, that's what most people think. Actually, it's the beat comes first, and then that gives us sort of the oomph to create the lyrics. Yeah. With these stories, with all, you know, what we've just discussed, the stories at the Fat Duck, the stories here, what comes first? Like the story, then you find the ingredients to work it back, or the ingredients?
Can be both, but I'd say the thing that links all of the different ways to get to the end goal is about imagining what it would be like to experience the end goal, right? So what if someone came to the restaurant, and, you know, fling a few of these out. What if someone came to the restaurant and they have two squares of jelly in front of them, one's orange and one's red, and we asked them to eat the beetroot one first. What if it was the other way around? What if you came to the restaurant and for one of the dishes you had to put a pair of headphones on and listen to the sound of the sea? How would that make people feel? And whether it's Fat Duck, Perfectionist Cafe, Hind's Head, The Crown, Dinner by Heston, Devonshire, how do we want people to feel and experience? How do we imagine we would like them to be when they come to whatever it is, whether it's here or a 3 Michelin star progressive restaurant like Fat Duck? And so your end thing is all about giving someone the sort of experience and joy. And in some cases, especially Fat Duck, it was, for many people, through being told, it's like going into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, this imaginary world. Yeah, what if I ate this sweet and I did float up to the ceiling? Now, obviously, we didn't do that, but in the movie, that happens, right? Yeah. That is the joy and wonder of what you can give people an experience. And they will say, I heard it so many times, wow, I came in, I was quite nervous, but I was just so looking forward to it. And it was hard to get a table, so you'd book 2 months out, you would come for 5 hours to the restaurant, and then you'd have this, what we called emotional residue afterwards, recounting all of these things. And you know, like how we have merch now in everything. We would have things for people to take away as part of their experience, as, you know, it would sit on the mantelpiece. The menus would be framed, the little box that you got given, the little sweet box, where all of these things became something that people then took away before Instagram and all of the social things. took them away to help share the experience and the story that they've had, before social media kind of flattens all of that to some, gives you a look behind the curtain before you've actually been. Mm-hmm. So you've got 2 months prior, 5 hours there, and then you can really, the impact you make in that 5 hours just lives on as this kind of emotional experience. And that is, people say, well, I was there for 5 hours. It went like that. It was just magical.
I love the emotional residue thing. It's like what we were talking about before, that peak end rule. Like, you remember the end of an experience is more important than the middle and the beginning. And I think that's what I was saying to Osh. It's like, if you went to go and see Oasis and they didn't end with Wonderwall, you'd be pretty fucked off, right? Like, the end experience, the end song at a gig is really important because that's what you go home with. Yeah. With the emotional residue and the magic and the Alice in Wonderland and all those things, like, I love what you're saying about what if we could make someone feel this? It's almost like the hope you need to get through the whole resistance, right? It's that spark, sort of that glitter of hope, glittering star in the distance. But like, in terms of the actual magic, like how are you cultivating that? And actually, what I want to sort of go into now is not you, Ash, in terms of being the man who can pull ideas from sort of the creative post on our right to the sort of the militant discipline post on the left. I want to kind of swim down the creative waters now. Like, how would you create that wonderment and magic? 'Cause magic is synonymous with what you guys did. Tell me about that.
I mean, it's about. I think it's restaurants and food is always evolving, right? Like, from 2001 to 2008 for me was fat duck golden years. That was, boundaries were broken in terms of what was happening on the plate to people and their experience emotionally. Obviously, it's a little bit different now. It's a bit more storytelling. It's a bit more journey led now. But we're talking about techniques and cooking practices that didn't exist that do now exist. Heston did the triple cooked chip, in the early 90s. It's done really badly in most places, which is really frustrating. And, sometimes people get forgotten for the things that they have brought to the scene. You have this, one idea might spark something completely different down here, and that trial and error, not being afraid to fail, which is so often not allowed, because this needs to be ready on the 20th, If I give you an analogy to the coffee, right?
Yeah.
So we co-founded this coffee company. We were going to do multiple formats: whole bean espresso, whole bean filter, coffee bags, and we want to do the little pods, right? Now, no one teaches you how to do these little pods. So it's trial and error. And I told my partner, Grant, about what it is in the kitchen and how we operate kitchen. Food's not right, does not go to the table. You're better off saying, look, we've had an issue, blah, blah, blah. We'll send you a couple of extra courses. It's a done thing. Make people feel that you're doing something great for them. It's not right. I'm not going to send it to you. But actually, taste this. Love you to see what you think. And then he said to me, right, nowhere along this process, no matter how much pressure you get from the financial side, probably him actually in most cases, if it's not ready, it's not ready. So it took me another year to develop the 6 blends into the little capsules, because that is a really dark art that no one teaches.
Why is it so? Yeah, like what's the dark art of getting the coffee into the Nespresso capsules?
So similar style drink, although they are quite different drink. Pod coffee to espresso from a machine. In an espresso machine, 18 grams of coffee in, 9 bars of pressure.
9 bars of pressure, as in
the pressure that the water is forced through the coffee.
Sweet, yeah.
And it's a flat bed of coffee, like a puck.
Yep.
And you anywhere between 35 and 40 grams in your double espresso. A pod has got 5.2 to 5.5 grams of coffee in it. Mm-hmm. The water comes in from the side and goes out the other side. There is a gap in there. And you've got 5 grams of coffee to 40 grams of water out. So it's an 8-to-1 ratio. That's 2-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
So what do I have to do to the coffee to make sure that I can get as close to this as possible? So I'm going to limit my water in, but I have to roast the coffee differently, different beans. What works in this machine won't necessarily brew and extract very well in a pod, for example.
Sure.
But it's very difficult unless you know someone who's done it to actually do it. So it took a year, and he's like, when's it going to be ready? Because we need to launch. I'm like, well, it's not ready. And so we launched everything else, and the pods came about 6 months later on.
And what were you doing? Like creative tenacity, like what do you say to yourself? Because so many I suppose this is kind of like a real discipline question. It's like, what do you say to yourself when you're banging your head against your wall? Against the wall. Like, how do you keep bludgeoning through this sort of resistance?
You'll get there pretty much 99 times out of 100, but you have to also listen to your own instinct. And I was told by various coffee experts that the beans from this origin won't extract very well in a coffee pod, and this one will. And then I thought, the ones that I was told weren't great, weren't giving me what I wanted, and the ones that I was told wouldn't work, they actually did work. So this is a bit like the kitchen. You challenge everything, and you think, well, that's great. Knowledge is absolute king, but I'm not just going to take it for granted that everything that you hear is right. So let's just try it and test it and make sure that we're not just following like a sheep. And I think that's where my time with Heston at Fat Duck, 20 years, is we'll find out our own, work with different people, but how can we apply this, and is it as effective in the same way in the experiences we try and give people? Yeah. And listen to what we like. And ultimately, when you're a chef, you try and cook food that you believe people will enjoy, but you also have got to love it as well. Or else there's a disconnect, and there's not that integrity between the two things.
That's what I was going to ask you about. So with those rappers, I love that band. I'll send you, text you some of their stuff afterwards. But it's like you listen to them, and like there's 11. It's such a unique band in terms of there's a bit like there was loads of chefs. That's why I sort of think about this. Loads of chefs, 50, 40 chefs cooking for 50, 40 people in the Fat Duck.
Yeah.
There's 11 of these rappers, and they've each got their own style, and it kind of links together in this weird cacophony of just kind of, it's just hard hitting. And what I was kind of wanted to ask you is like, how important is it to put your soul into a dish?
100%.
And how do you do that? Because it's like you may have a banging idea, and I find this with the podcast. So sometimes I can ask a question that I know that will really like resonate with the audience, but it's not right for me, and it's got to come, like the question had to come from my soul. Like I'm trying to see what that's like with food. Like, and how do you do that? Like, how do you actually say, right, this is me? Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I trust my own vision of how I want something to taste. I know what I can get from something. So I was listening to Osh's podcast with you last night, and I'd forgotten about Charlie, the other guy involved in the pub, is he has a thing called Lost and Founded, where there's 40 founders of the most incredible businesses, generally hospitality, food and drink, etc.
What is it, like a meetup or like a group?
It's just get together, have some nice food somewhere.
Oh, lovely.
And generally 3 people put themselves forward and they do a course. So he said, well, would you come and do a course? So the first one I went to.
Whereabouts was it?
Was at Clipson's Arch up in North London. It's Thomas Parry and Super 8's place in the Archways.
Yeah. Is that Brat at
Brat at Clipson's Arch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I'm like, crikey, there's like 40 incredible people that you just go, wow, how did you create this restaurant group, this brand, they're just amazing people. And so that's one thing. And then, could you cook something for this? I'm like, oh, Christ, all right. Pressure's on a bit here, this is not a normal experience. So I said, well, like what? So, okay, I'll do tiramisu. And I think I spoke to you about the tiramisu.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, right, how do I don't want to do something super wacky, but everyone's going to be expecting me to do something completely different. It's not going to look like tiramisu. It's going to be could look like something else.
Yeah.
Like, that's not me anymore at the moment, right? And I just want it to blow people away when they taste it and go, wow, it looks like tiramisu, but oh my God, the depth and the complexity. So you start thinking, right, the best textured cream, what do I want it to be like? What do I want to try and emulate with this? Not just bang a recipe together and it be okay.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of expectation when I turn up with something that people are going to eat, right? The liquid I'm going to soak the biscuits in. How can I layer this in a way that, like a mixologist would layer a cocktail? Delivery. How do I want that journey of taste to be? I know this is sounding like really wanky.
This is like so up my street. So just keep going, yeah.
And I don't go there and go, hey, look, this is what I've done, and talk for 5 minutes about this tiramisu. I just go, here's tiramisu. I just want people to go, oh my God, that is absolutely delicious. I don't need to know how it's made. Maybe they are interested. Some are, some aren't. But I just want people to go, oh my God, that was bloody amazing. And that's that residue of going, maybe in a couple of months or 2 years or whatever, go, I remember that tiramisu you made at that thing. Not saying they're going to say that. I'm just saying that to me is, I know when you taste it, you go, that's how I envisaged I would get the most out of that experience. As simple as something like that. Doesn't have to be deconstructed, look like something else, have vapor and fire, and it's just got to be delicious.
The other thing on that is you can go to sleep at night knowing that it was the thing that you put your soul down, and you put the thing that you wanted to put down. And I think that's one of the things with me is, it's like so many people are going to judge what you do irregardless. So as long as you're happy with it and you put your thing down and your soul into your art, then I think you can go to sleep at night. What I'd love to know, so your sort of creativity, curiosity has evolved since 2000, since Fat Duck. Like, how would you say it's changed? First question. And then second question, I'd love to know what the thread between it all is. So I think Heston's thing is question everything. Yeah. I'd love to know, like, I want to get into, as I said before, like how you're different from Heston. Like, what would you say your one thing is? One sentence of your Ash's approach to cooking. But I suppose to begin with, let's go into how it's evolved and how it's different over. And I suppose we can touch upon dinner as well. I think there was a really funny time we did an interview for probably. I was very early on, and it was pre-dinner, and I think he said, "Oh, we're actually quite different, but actually he's more Heston than I am." And I'm like, "Well, hold on." Wait, sorry. He was saying this to the interview bloke. Yeah. So we're sitting there, and he's like, "Well, he's probably more Heston than I am, but actually himself." But we're different, but similar. It's a very, I think you call it an oxymoron, don't you, or something like that. It's like, and I was like, "Oh, hold on a minute. I think we're actually quite different, but if you put us in two completely different rooms with the same stuff and say, try and create something from this, I don't think we'd be a million miles away. We might go about it a slightly different way." How so? I mean, I'll probably be thinking more on this sort of practicality side of how I'm going to deliver it, because I don't want to go down a garden path and, like, it's amazing, but it's completely irrelevantly expensive that it makes no commercial sense. But also, how are we going to make 100 a day? So I think everyone's different, right? Yeah, not two people on the planet are the same. Exactly, yeah. But you can have this lovely diverse approach, but it's in a similar sort of collective way forward. So it's hard to say. I mean, at the end of the day, whether it's any of the restaurants I've worked at or been part of launching or here, just want people to have a great time and come in and go, that was really, really brilliant. In the case of here, anything that people enjoy. Some people love the sticky toffee pudding. Some people love the lamb chops with the green sauce. Some people think it's the best steak and chips they've ever had. They love our chips. They're how we want our chips to be. There's no, do you see what I mean? Yeah. Different things do different things to different people. I met a lady yesterday on the way out, and Sujan,
GM said, "Oh, this is Ashley's. He's one of the co-founders and the chef part." I said, "Oh, it's absolutely amazing. I've wanted to come here for so long. I had sticky toffee pudding. I brought my mum. She's going back to Norway tomorrow." And, we ended up sitting next to some people from my favourite band. And I'm like, I wouldn't even know who these people are. Her experience is going to be very different than the next person that comes through the door for a completely different reason. They may say, I just love it. I love the simplicity of it, but everything tastes great. It's simple stuff. 3 lamb chops on a plate, cooked over embers that we make in the kiln. There's a lot of detail in there. Lamb chops, for example, we'll take the lamb fat, render it down, and then cold infuse mint leaves into the lamb fat overnight. So literally just before serving, after they've been on the grill, little lick of this sort of lamb fat and mint oil on top, a little bit of seasoning, job done. And then you have this quite complex, it's almost like mint sauce, but without being overly minty. But there's no mint sauce anywhere. It's just like, oh my God, it's just a lamb chop on a plate. Do you see what I mean?
I love this. It's linking back to this. It's like that I think from what I'm picking up from you, you're, instead of like question everything, yours is this emotional residue thing. I think you're really focusing on that end experience, whether it's someone in Norway or And what I love is the sticky toffee pudding is just this one thing that you've created with your soul. But as I say today, I don't know how many covers you do a day, but like there'll be 160 different people going with a slightly different flavor and texture of emotional residue, and I think that is just gorgeous. As an experience is a stunning thing. I want to talk about race cars and your son Ballet.
Oh yeah.
I love that sort of beautiful juxtaposition, because your son's in the Royal Ballet
School.
And I'd love to know what he's actually like. His and obviously for this, that's like the hardest thing to get into, right? This extraordinary. Like high standards is basically what it is. Like, what's he taught you, do you think, that's made you a better chef or a better leader or a better person?
I think it's been a real eye-opener watching someone so young. Like he started off just a local dance school after school. Then he went and auditioned to be a junior associate at the Royal Ballet to come up every Saturday.
What's the junior associate?
So it's like you don't live or board there. You're not full time.
Right.
It was like 8 or 9, 10 years old.
So
right?
Young. Yeah.
So Emma, my wife, she's really.
How old are you now? Sorry, just for context.
He's 15.
Okay, sick. Yeah.
So, every weekend Emma would bring him up to the class on Saturday morning. Good 3 hours at the highest level training for young kids, and that's like your football academy.
Yeah.
You can kind of see who's got it, who's going to physically make it, who's got the work ethic and the right mentality to... And then I guess they are born with it to a certain extent, but they see what they're shown a lot of the time, right? By their parents, I guess. We both really work really hard. And I think that's a really nice quality that both Max and Sophia, my daughter, who's 2 years younger, she's really super academic, very neat and tidy, is incredible with animals, and is just the nicest little human being. Like, she's just so lovely.
How old is she?
She's 13. And then Max is highly strung, obsessive about anything, which can be a very dangerous thing, right? If he loves something, that's it, he's all in. I'm similar.
Mate,
Emma, my wife, is similar.
Yeah.
Anything I do, I'm 100%. Can't do 99%.
Yeah.
And he's had to work really, really hard. There are things that are beyond your control when it comes to that sort of elite training.
How so?
So, I mean, I'm no ballet dancer, obviously.
Yeah. Neither am I, mate. Don't worry.
And they look at the physicality of your parents, his grandparents, height, build, like the whole thing. And I'm thinking, Christ,
why would they look at that?
Because they need to know what your potential is as a physical human. Like, how are your bones going to grow? Have your parents had problems with knees or anything?
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
So that's out of everyone's control, really.
Yeah.
And then you've got the work ethic and the mentality. And for him, in particular, now he's at boarding school at the Royal Ballet, and it's 9,000 applicants down to 12 for the year in boys, and he managed to get in.
9,000 to 12?
Yeah, from around the world, yeah.
What?
Yeah. And this was during COVID as well.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah.
And so he got in, and you get 3 years, the first 3 years in school. And then in that third year, they spend the whole time worrying about getting assessed out. So if I say you're going to get assessed out and you're worrying about that, it's quite a negative thing.
So when you say assessed out, as in?
So your year 10 and 11, which he's in year 10 now, last 2 years, they basically cull the weaker.
Okay, sorry, I'm with you. Right? Yeah, with you.
Now, physically, you might be not quite right. Mm-hmm. It's not very PC these days, but that's just the reality of it. Yeah. You might not be growing right. You might have injury-prone things that your body just cannot take it. And then you're living in that third year of school thinking, I might fail getting through to the next one. And when you're 12 years old, 13 years old, you don't have the ability to
mad pressure
to deal with that. So Emma has worked massively hard, and she's actually retraining as a counsellor now. She was in TV production for years and years. Then we had the children. Now she's going back as a counsellor. So she's worked really hard on his mental ability to deal with stuff at very, very young. Most adults couldn't deal with it, right?
Yeah, so what are some of those? Because this is probably what he's teaching you.
So if I tell you, you might fail at the end of this year, you're going to be thinking, shit, I'm going to fail.
Yeah, it's horrible.
The whole mentality of this was, well, actually, I'm going to get in. There's two different ways you can approach this mentally.
Yeah.
You can be scared of failure, or you're going to go, I'm going to go for it because I'm going to get in. I'm going to get there. And I'm quite into my cars, and I love driving. I love racing and watching car racing, Formula One. Tried to get him into it for years. He's just not bothered whatsoever. Then the magical year where Lewis controversially lost the title to some bigger things at play with race control, and you had what was it called, Drive to Survive.
Yeah, sick program.
He switched on to, now he's obsessed with it. And he said to me the other day, I don't want to be a principal dancer, but when I'm retired from that, I want to be a Formula One team boss. And he's just like, that's how his mind works, right? I want to be that, so that's what I'm going to go and do.
Mad. What are the parallels, do you think, between ballet and racing cars and like service, would you say?
I would say the two elements. You've got this micro, the ability to look at things in macro. Like,
is this coming from the
from a chef, the way a chef's mind would work?
Yeah.
Well, not all of them, obviously.
Yeah.
Some more than others. Well, I'm going to break this down. I'm going to really look at absolutely everything. So I'm going to get everything out of this to create the best experience at the final end, right, of a dish. Formula One, how can I'm going to get every little minute percent performance consistency, because there's no point having the fastest car that breaks down all the time.
Sure.
There's no point having something that only works 1 out of 3. Do you see what I mean? There's the similarity there. You need that race car to make it through the race, be the fastest one, with the best driver that's tuned into it.
Yeah.
We need the best recipes that are going to be able to be done by your team every time. We'll have 550 people in today for food upstairs in the restaurant, over 3.5 floors. I need everyone's experience to be as consistently brilliant as we intend every single time. And you've got to minimalise the times where we get it wrong or we don't meet the expectation. But then when you come to service, you make things right in every single way that you can, so that when someone leaves, they've had the best experience, or you've recovered it, or you've made it even better than it was going to be. And so from a ballet, not being a ballet dancer, but a performer, you've got to give that emotional, you've got to draw people into what they're seeing, whether you're a ballet dancer on a stage, you're a singer-songwriter, you're an artist, all of those things, you've really got to bring them in with all of that detail and connection to what you do. There's a lot of parallel things. You've got to. Why I came to the Formula one was when he's had really hard times, and you don't know how to take criticism. You don't go there and you're the best ballet dancer in the world. They want to know you're the best person to listen to what I'm saying, so you become the best version of yourself.
At such a young age, mate.
But he's
taking that on, man.
But you know what? The brilliant thing is he would be really upset or disappointed or down sometimes, and he would got to the point where he'd go, "What would Lewis Hamilton do?"
Wow.
And I was like, "That's amazing."
Yes.
You know, and I can't wait to tell Lewis one day.
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll come in. I have cooked for him before.
What did you cook for him?
He did come to the Fat Duck originally.
Yeah.
So I met him there. Then he came to our dinner by Heston that we had in Melbourne, and he was going through his vegan stage. I don't know what stage he's at the moment. We're not.
It's mad how all these vegans are now scoffing meat. Like
we're not terribly vegan here. By
the way, it's 12. We want to
Yeah. So we'll sort some food out.
Yeah.
So so we did a menu for him, this vegan menu, and then he was like, "Oh, it's so good. I'm going to come back tomorrow." So it was the Formula One in Melbourne that week. They came 3 nights on a row, and we're like, "Oh no, it's so much work." But we're actually, you know what? Let's do it. Let's make sure he's not eating the same thing every night. And
so how did you change it? Like, what were the different dishes?
We just got together as 6 of us and went, right, what could we use? We were quite good with vegetarian and vegan anyway. To have an offer that, you know, you're not going to come 3 nights in a row. So when you come 3 nights in a row, you're like, oh my God, what are we going to do now? So we'll use that way. We'll finish that way. We'll steer that into this dish. That'll go with a broth of this. And let's send someone out and go and pick this up from a friend up the road because we know they use that ingredient.
Yeah.
So all of those things. So, a bit of a challenge, but it was really good fun. And people love that challenge sometime. And there was a tight deadline on that. So it's not your conventional, let's come up with this and it's ready when it's ready. Well, I had to be ready for that night.
Deadlines actually. Rick Rubin's a great. In fact, I'll get you a copy of this book. He's got a book called The Creative Way. So he did Red Hot Chili Peppers, Adele, music producer. Red Hot Chili Peppers, Adele, Beastie Boys. Like, he's done literally everyone. Yeah. Mad guy. He's got like some huge beard, but he's got this beautiful book. And one of the things he said, it's all about creativity. And one of the things he says is having a deadline's so important. It goes back to that swimming in the creative force.
Yeah.
Because it forces you to be like, right, Lewis Hamilton's coming tomorrow, mate, and we need a different menu. So we better. And there's something about the sort of it welds you together with this strength. Well, how would you say? So service is like is more like a dance. How would you say it's like a dance? Linking it to the ballet, not necessarily like specifically ballet, but like how is it like a dance from here to then the dining room?
I would say, people that are really great at service are people that can adapt very, very quickly to who they're delivering service to, making them feel really good, because everyone's different, right? Everyone comes in with a different expectation. Hopefully they think it's going to be good. But actually they've got different ways of measuring what's good. They like to be communicated to in different ways. Maybe it's the amount of time that you spend with them at the table. Some people probably can be quite rude sometimes and don't want to be fussed over and don't want to be disturbed all the time. And you've got to quickly work that out, that you're going to sort of tune into how they want to take their experience. And then you've got a whole room full of them. So they're not all the same. We don't apply the same, everything's got to be like that. Do you see what I mean? There's this dexterity to it.
Yeah, the dance, I suppose each customer's different. Each song you listen to is different. If you're at a nightclub or at a rave, every song's different, and the way you dance is slightly different for each song. And I suppose each customer that is the dance, right?
Yeah.
It's like
you've got your plan.
Yeah.
Sometimes your plan doesn't go to plan, and you've got to adapt and head things off before it gets even worse. Or how can I fix this without them even noticing? So I'm not a dancer, never have been, probably never will be. That's my one thing I'm just no good at whatsoever. Yeah. However, I guess it would be the same as they have the precision of knowing where they should be. But you never know. Some things happen. They might not be in the exact same space. So the other person has to.
It's been like water, isn't it? As we said. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I'm not,
The so I didn't realize how mad, like how much of a pressure cooker the Royal Ballet was. Obviously 3 stars, mad pressure cooker as well. Like, what's your approach to dealing with mad pressure? Because we've just done a big deal, and I'm like, I'm in that sort of fight or flight. What the fuck it is? Fight or flight. I always get a tongue twist on that. Which is like, on the one hand, I'm super excited. Like, we've just done a deal with Uber Eats, which is huge, but it's a trial.
Yep.
And like it could go wrong, and I'm sort of the pendulum swinging in my nut between like, oh my god, this is amazing. Between, oh my god, this is so much pressure. What if I fuck this up? How am I going to? Yeah, so I'm asking this selfishly, like, how did you deal with that immense pressure? Because I've watched documentaries online. I think that was the French chef who killed himself because he couldn't deal with the pressure of 3 stars. Like,
Bernard Loiseau.
That was it. Yeah,
brilliant book actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He it is one of my favourite books. I'm not a massive book reader. I just fall asleep, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I read that very early on. He closed his restaurant when he had 2 stars, and they did a big refurb. And he spent.
What year was this? Sorry.
Oh, this would have been like probably 90s, I'd say.
Yeah.
And it's called Burgundy Stars is the book. You can still get it, but they don't print it anymore.
Is it like a biography or autobiography?
Yeah, it's someone else wrote it.
Okay,
it's written by an American lady. Can't remember her name. Anyway, it charted the 6 or 8 months, whatever it was, or the year, where he just looked at absolutely everything that was going to fit into the new version of his restaurant. So he went to the snail farmer, he went to the Apois cheesemaker, he went to the man that reared the frogs for the frog leg dish, and he travelled around, sometimes with his sommelier, sometimes not. And it's a lovely story. It's absolutely brilliant. It's really romantic, but actually he did achieve his 3 stars, but then he lived in fear of losing those 3 stars. And I think we had that at the fact that when we achieved 3 stars in 2004, we always saw it as, I mean, I guess a lot of the listeners now, we're in a modern day world. You've got to think
That's what I'm trying to understand, yeah.
Pre-social media, where we have access to all of these incredible people that give you the ability to understand things and make your own, and use that to your benefit. There wasn't that back then. So you go, well, actually, why don't we approach this as winning 3 stars every year, rather than, shit, what happens if we lose it? So you can only do your best. And if everyone's on it and you've got the right people around you, delivering and innovating and looking after everything. You do need finance people that look after stuff. Yeah, they're going to be a pain in the arse sometimes, but there's no point going out of business.
Yeah.
Because you're too busy looking over, over here. Don't worry about it. All you can do is you can do your best. And if you fail, I used to think it was cheesy, out of this failure became this thing, but it is true, life goes on and you will recover if you want it to. If you want to wither away and just feel sorry for yourself, which it is hard sometimes, if you get a bad review or someone writes something really, really harsh about you.
Oi, oi, I am delighted to announce that the most banging kebab on planet Earth has just joined Uber Eats. Bababoom. It's banging. It's literally vavavoom for your taste buds. I smash the sweet potato hummus on the reg. The chicken kebabs are insane. I go to the one in Battersea Rise loads of my mates have a Clapham, so smash it all the time. And they've also got one out east in Stratford. And look, don't say I don't treat ya. If you use the code BOOMDAN40, you're going to get 40% off when you spend 20 quid or more. So yeah, please do that if you want some banging kebabs. And if you're a restaurant who's looking for an amazing delivery partner, then hit me up. Our partnership with Uber Eats, we can do some sick things behind the scenes. So please reach out. Thank you so much.
That is brilliant. But, it's interesting, though, the whole dance thing to hear. Like, I had to bring Max a couple of times to work, and especially in the holidays.
Yeah.
And he just followed me around. He's like, right, what are we doing next, Dad?
Yeah,
I've got to go and fix this. I've got to go and see that person. Need to go and speak to George in the butchery. I've got to go and do this. And he was just like, that was just brilliant. I loved it.
Yeah.
There's this similarity between making people feel good.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there is probably a lot of synergy there that he would, any performer gets a buzz out of making people feel
Good.
amazing.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And they all have the same things. Oh, was it good enough? Was I on my, they all have the same thing.
Well, see, but also what I love is where I think it all links together, and even links together with this, is like the emotional residue. And I think you can sometimes I listen to a podcast and it can actually change people's lives. I'm not saying that I'm doing that, but like
No, it does.
That's the pursuit I'm trying to go to. And it's like, if I get, because sometimes it's like crawling through glass, it's like, fucking hell, I've got like, I can do this all day, but like this is 2 hours out of my week. The rest is like the business side. Like I'm going to sit with my accountant for 4 hours this afternoon, which is going to drive me nuts, But like it's worth doing it.
Yeah.
But I think that the link between all of it, whether it's ballet, even car racing to an extent, like there's the emotional residue of making people feel good.
Yeah.
It's like that's soul nourishing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Do you want to cover something about the coffee now?
Let's do the coffee now, mate.
Yeah. All right.
So I think the first thing is like why you got into the coffee. So tell me about that. Like, I think have you read the book? There's a book called Caffeine by Michael Pollan, which is just you can listen to it. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And
he talks about how the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, all wouldn't have happened because of coffee.
Really?
Like, it's mad. All the insurance brokerages, they all started in coffee shops in London.
Really?
And it's like he has this map of like timeline of like when coffee came into it. So before we get into the brand, like how has coffee been of use to you? And then also like how have you, like what pulled you to go into coffee? Do you know what I mean? Like it's a big thing.
Yeah, so I mean for years at the Fat Duck, we were very, very tight on space. So we used Nespresso when that really started to kick off in the country, like early 2000s. We had it when I was there in 99.
What, Nespresso was that old?
Yeah, Nespresso is actually quite old.
Really?
Yeah. Can't remember the exact date, but I mean, it's like a little while ago. I'd say 80s, somewhere around there.
No, that's wild. I didn't realise that. Yeah.
And
that's all good.
Yeah, so we had that. And then we went to, we took the Fat Duck to Australia, to Melbourne in 2015 and opened dinner there in the same place. Well, we were opening dinner. We decided to take the Fat Duck there so we could renovate the one in Bray. And obviously Melbourne, the coffee scene in Melbourne is off the charts. We knew what we were doing could be so much better, right? But of course we didn't really know where to start. So I spent half of my time for nearly 6 years in Melbourne. So a good 20, 25 weeks a year, I would be there. Do you want to bring it? Yeah, it's fine. No, it's fine. Just stick it there. Awesome. Yeah, just
whack it there. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing. Sorry, yes, we'll jump into this in a sec. It all looks delicious, but just quickly to wrap up, or not wrap up, but just square the circle on the coffee. So you're at Fat Duck, go to Melbourne. The coffee scene over there is wild.
Insane.
Why is it so good? Like,
I just think they started their interest, that probably the mixture of people that inhabit Melbourne, the sort of cultural coming together of a very forward-thinking city, But anyway, so met loads of different people through recommendations, and then decided to go with one guy called Nolan from Proud Mary Coffee, and the whole world changed. I went to his cafe and we sat down for a couple of hours and we tasted different coffees in different ways and filtered coffee. I'd never tasted anything like it. Like it blew my mind. I was like, wow. And he put a barista into our restaurant for 6 months while we were there. So we had the best coffee program going, at 3-star level. And it just carried on. And I was like, I love all the geekery around it. I love the precision, but I also love the trial and error of it as well, and how to try and get the best out of something to a flavour that you're trying to achieve. Fast forward, good 5 years, I left Fat Duck. A friend of mine who's a motoring journalist called Dickie Meaden was involved with a coffee project. And he said, could you taste some coffee? And I didn't know Dickie very well at the time. And I said, yeah, sure, just send it on down and I'll give it a taste. So I spent 3 days with these 6 or 7 different coffees, brewing them in different methods. And it was terrible. And I was like, I don't really know how honest to be. I'm always really honest, right?
Yeah.
Don't really know them that well. Don't know who's really behind this coffee thing they're doing. And I was like, I'm just going to be honest, constructive. So I gave them all my feedback charts of how I brewed it and measured everything. I like marked some of them like 0.5 out of 10, 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10. I was like,
This is all your Dickie's coffees, right?
No, Dickie wasn't behind the coffee.
Right.
A coffee expert Q grader was behind the coffee.
Okay, sorry. So it wasn't like you were just slagging off his...
No.
Yeah,
but I didn't want to upset anyone at the same time,
Okay,
right?
I'm with you. Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'll just be honest, because if someone's asking me in my opinion what things taste like, I'm going to tell you. So anyway, so I didn't hear from him for about 3 weeks. And he said, oh, the main guy wants to speak to you. I was like, oh, Christ. And he said, look, absolutely brutal. He said, but, why don't you join us and we look at this together? So I was like, you know what? I was working on a restaurant at the time that I wanted to open. This is just pre-COVID. Yeah. So then the world went mad, right? So I was working on a restaurant. I thought, I could do this alongside it and kind of, it fits in nicely. So this would be great. That restaurant concept had a cafe part of it as well. And I thought, this is bloody brilliant. I get to co-found something, be at the heart of the taste and flavour part of this brand. I can bring a unique viewpoint. I'm not a coffee shop owner. I'm not a Q grader. I worked with some of the best Q graders. So
when you say Q grader, as in what's that?
Q grader is like a master sommelier. So it's a qualified expert in coffee that can mark coffee out of 100 for how the quality of the coffee is. So you have up to 80 is commodity coffee, cheap coffee, right? Sure. High street, chain crap.
Yeah.
Above 80 is specialty coffee or speciality coffee. So these Q graders, they have to be reassessed every 3 or 4 years. And I worked with a brilliant one called Rob, and he actually was head of coffee.
It's all good, yeah.
For Julian Metcalf when he set Pret up.
Wow. Yeah.
Anyway, great guy. And he said, do you want to do a Q grading course? And I was like, do you know what? Actually, no, because you're the Q grader. I want to be me. I want to be the chef that talks about taste and flavour. I don't want to be...
Wow, that's almost like linking... what we were talking about right at the beginning about the military element and the craziness. It's almost that same thing happening again, right?
But why just have one dimension rather than two? I've spent 30 years getting to where I am with taste and flavour and experience. Actually, you're the best one I've ever met. So why don't we work together on this? Because you bring your thing, I bring my thing, right?
Sure.
And then... So basically, I met with the guys that were setting up Artisan, and I said, look, give me a couple of weeks, and if I can add something to this, I'd love to do it. If I can't, we'll just do what everyone else does. And no offence to anyone, but that's not really what I wanted to do. Let's source, single origin beans, roast it, describe it, sell it, and off we go, and open coffee shops and whatnot. That's not what I wanted to do. So I thought, well, actually, this is about... There's a massive gap between how speciality talks to normal people, like people that are non-expert in coffee. They don't really know the detail about coffee. So if I give you an analogy, if you go to a restaurant and you get, let's say, a sommelier comes to your table and he starts talking about things that you don't understand, grape varieties, terroir, altitude, process, and people just go,
it's hooty fluty linguistic.
I feel really uncomfortable.
What it is.
I feel really uncomfortable with what I feel stupid.
Yeah.
So I'm going to close down and I'm just going to go to what I know. And I'm looking on my list. Oh, I know this one. Yeah, I'll go for that one, please. But good sommelier will tap into you within 30 seconds. And then he'll take you on a little journey left or right of, you say, I normally drink I love Chardonnay, for example. Oh, well, maybe you should try this one. This is actually a little bit different than maybe where you were looking, but the reason is this, and it tastes like this. Really easy to understand. What I found was specialty coffee was talking at people. It's almost like a foreign language. They can't process that to go, oh, I can imagine what that tastes like. You do get the odd flavour note down the bottom, the 3 words, chocolate this and this, but actually, there was a very big disconnect between the top and the mid-market, which is where we were really interested in, right? So I set up 6 different coffee styles. We call them characters. If you're nerdy, you call it a profile. And I wanted to use blending the best specialty beans to how bit like that thing over there, the way you mix the music.
Yeah.
Treble, bass, middle, bit of this, bit of that.
So you're getting different types of beans.
So I'm getting different beans, roasting them, and then I'm blending them together.
So it's not one bean. It's not.
No. They're all blends. They're all blends.
Sick.
And the latest, so I've got 5 different styles of caffeinated coffee. So I've got, and then we name them like fun things like the heroine, so the everyday hero. So everyone will love it. No one will hate it. It does exactly what it says on the tin. The big shot, which we have here for our milkies.
Got me off my nut.
and that one. So that's classic. What most people, that darker roast, but not burnt and bitter. It's rich, it's chocolatey, it's fudgy,
Mate, that word, right? Fudgy. So obviously I ordered some, right, before we did this. And so there's a couple of things just to tease out here. Is one, I think it links back to what we were saying earlier about like the tiramisu and everyone's different. And I think it's one of the things, your sort of superpowers is like having that empathy to really make things accessible to people. And I think, as you said, you on the packaging, it's like, and I think only you could do this because as you said, you've engulfed yourself in all these different ways and textures and flavors. But you've got like, I think you said like tastes like cookie or like it's just really like clear and not like, oh, I've got higher status than you. You know nothing, you dumb fuck. Do you know what I mean?
It's understandable, right?
It's so understandable. But then what I would love to understand is how you come up with words like fudgy and like. I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I don't. Yeah. It's like one of those things that it probably comes so naturally to you. Probably like your son just going on and doing ballet, right? But like that's so hard. And I was like, when you drink it and you like the word fudgy is just like I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to pull out there. But
yeah, we actually described how I wanted them to taste, and so I laid out in front of Grant, my partner, and Dickie and a few others, and said, look, these are the styles of coffee that I think we should be aiming to achieve, because it allows people to tap into it, choose their style of coffee that they like, because we're using a currency of words and language that you can understand exactly what you just said. And there's no altitude on here, there's no varietal on here, there's no process, how the coffee was processed from the fruit into taking the little bean out, the little seed out inside. All of those things don't mean anything unless you know what that means. That's like high-level coffee knowledge. Whereas this talks all about relatable stuff. So, this one in particular is, the enigma. So that might tune into one person and think, well, that sounds like me, right? So we're humanizing these characters. The heroine, the big shot, the smart cookie, the genius, the enigma, and the dreamer. The dreamer's the decaf. So that's one thing. Then you've got the numbers that we put with them. The development numbers were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we were, well, people, this is where you start bridging into the marketing side. And you go, well, people think that 2 is not as good as 1 and 4 is definitely not as good as number 1, right?
Yeah.
So why don't we put numbers as a little bit of curiosity and a thing to... So 720. If I ask you you don't know what 720 means. But if you want to go and find out what 720 means, 720 is the number of teeth on the 3 cogs of the machine that broke the Enigma code at Bletchley Park.
Wow.
So a cool little story.
Yeah.
That means nothing in terms of taste or flavour, but you're just sparking a little curiosity.
And the consumer can find that out.
Yeah. The genius,
that
161.
That goes back to what we were saying after about like putting your soul in your work without like a lot of people won't look that up, but you'll know when you give that to someone's like the 720's got a beautiful story that
you've got lovely opportunity to tell multiple layers of story within your marketing.
Yeah.
Right. And so these are the espresso beans, right? So I've used multiple origins, so 13, 14 different origins from around the world that bring intrinsic characteristics with where they're grown, the varietal, and the process. That's our knowledge behind the kitchen door, so to speak.
Yeah.
For filter, I've got the same characters, styles of coffee that I'm trying to achieve, but I might use different beans to get there because they brew differently with immersion compared to espresso through the machine. So I can finely tune them how exactly I want them to taste. And then again, when we do the little pods, there'll be different recipes again. And so my partner was like, oh my God, we can't have like 32 recipes of coffee. I'm like, well, if we want to do the best example I believe we can do, this is what we need to do. And we went, you know what, we're going to do it because it's how a chef would think rather than the other way round. And
yeah, let's I was going to think conscious of this
Yeah.
beautiful food. Like, let's talk. And what you just said there is teed us up lovely, Ash, in terms of how a chef would think. Talk me through the creative process with these dishes. And I think, as I said, I wanted to really get into like how you've evolved from your time at the Fat Duck. But like, yeah, talk us through these.
I mean, everything appears to be really, really simple. At the very beginning, when I met Osh and Charlie, they explained that they wanted to open this big pub, had great food, cooking over embers. There'd be a butcher. We'd dry age all the meat downstairs. We're literally on top of the butchery here. We'd dry age everything the whole way here. We'd make the bread. We'd have a baker. We'd make the butter. And where traditional English pub meets chop house with this wood ember grill, I was like, this sounds brilliant. And I was sort of working on another project coming out of COVID, and I was like, the old me would have been like, oh, I'm not going to do two things at once. But I knew one would be late. And so I went, do you know what? I'm going to go for it, because I didn't know Osh we only followed each other on Instagram. Charlie and we crossed paths in 2005 when he did a stage at Fat Duck. But it wasn't like that was fresh in my memory. We had 20 people sometimes every month that would come in for a month and work with us. And they were really passionate about describing something that I know we're sitting in the Devonshire now, but we never thought it'd be quite like this. But it sounded great.
What were they describing to you? Like, how are they describing what they were trying to create?
There were two things. The two that stuck in my thing was really wanted it to be egalitarian and about.
By that you mean
accessible and for everybody.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So the best ingredients treated in the best way, and do things that the spreadsheet might not make sense of. Right? 3 full-time butchers downstairs. Does it make sense? There's probably not a lot in it, but actually that's not normal, right? We make 1,000 bread rolls a day. We've got a tiny little prep kitchen and pastry where they roll 1,000. We've got the most amazing baker. So best ingredients, treated and cooked with sympathy, but it was all about flavour. And we've got paper tablecloths and simple white plates. There's no frippery. Do you know what I mean? We've got nice little silver salt and pepper things and beautiful wine glasses made by Jancis Robinson. So it's all about the experience, all about the food. And then we spent literally 3 days talking about the menu that you see in the restaurant. Maybe 1 or 2 things came off the menu and 1 or 2 things came on, but pretty much what you see, we spoke about this dish for probably 2.5 hours.
Let's try it.
So scallops with homemade Iberico bacon with malt vinegar butter, and then a little crumb fried in pork fat with some herbs through, a little bit of lemon zest. Where would we get the scallops from? What do we like? What don't we like? The malt vinegar came out. There's this beautiful malt vinegar made in Cornwall that's aged in oak barrels for 3 months. So it softens it from your chip shop malt vinegar. But as in this country, we love malt vinegar. It's quite nostalgic, right?
Yeah, it really is, yeah.
Actually, if we can incorporate that in a way that is just delicious, what can go wrong? Great scallops, hand-dived, bacon made downstairs with Brett Graham's Iberico that he rears in Shropshire, cured for 10 days, lightly roasted. And then we take all the pork fat, render it, fry the breadcrumbs. I mean, this is not health food, obviously.
Oh, yeah, I'm not eating that anyway, mate.
And it'd just be delicious. And can we do it at a really egalitarian price? And the other thing was they wanted a bin man to be able to sit next to a chairman, right?
I said that on the first poddy.
And I
so good.
got it, straight away.
Yeah.
You're putting the vision out there. I get it. Someone might save up, 6 months to come and spend £50 a head or £40 a head. We've got a £29 menu. Prawn and langoustine cocktails, got a whole langoustine on it. Steak and chips and béarnaise, sticky toffee pudding, 29 quid. That might be a lot of money for some people. Or you're sitting next to someone that can probably buy the whole block of this building. It should be available for everybody. it's a great leveler. And the great thing is, everyone starts talking to the table next to them up in the thing. It's like almost like a little social club, and it's just the barriers come down, and everyone's just here for a good time. You know,
That's what I said to Osh as well. I think on the pod is that like you don't really see people on their phones here. It's like I think I said it's like a weird little sort of utopia here, especially when you're getting boozed up. Like it's just, I mean, I fucking love it out there before Christmas. Right, let's jump in on these.
Right, so you've got scallops with bacon and malt vinegar butter. You've got crab salad with apple, citrus, and bitter leaves, and then this is brawn on toast. So we've got cheeks and hock and lardoed colonnata, sweet mustard, pickled onions, cornichons, little bit of fried bread in pork fat there as well. So, yeah.
Oh, getting on the scallop.
Just dive in, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Just a little taster.
What were the changes you made to the scallop? Yeah.
To be honest, it was more about the crumb wasn't there at the beginning of the plan. But we were just working on the balance of the butter, and then this is where you have that thing of like butter and butter and water liquid, for example, will split over time unless you put something in there to emulsify it, which you don't really want to do. You keep things really pure. So it's about making an emulsion that then we could warm, reshake, re-emulsify, so that every time we sauce the dish, you've got the right amount of vinegar, the right amount of seed, like all of the intrinsic are in the right balance when it goes in there. But we're not doing 40 covers, we're doing 550, 600 covers a day. This is the most popular dish, we'll go through at least 3,000 scallops a week.
Wow.
But we shuck them all by hand downstairs. They're all in shell diver, direct from the guy that catches them up in Scotland or Devon. And so all of those little details, and we're not reinventing the wheel. This is just paying attention to all the important parts. No different than we did at Fat Duck, at dinner, whatever the restaurant. It's the same ethos. It's caring about what this is.
Underrated, like senses when you're eating food, because obviously you've worked with all those sort of mad neuroscientists and stuff.
Yeah.
The texture, is it like what do most people not think about, or what's the hardest to get right? This is so fucking good.
I think over time, it's changed. Like there would almost be diversions or distractions in things. So people are concentrating too much on texture; they actually forget to taste it. About seasoning and balance. So acidity, richness, balance, fat. How we're using lardo de colonnata to mix in with this as a mixture, but it's porky and it's just pork. It's just like, and all the other bits really support that pork flavour. It's got texture from the bread at the bottom. You need to pay attention to all of these things. I find sometimes things just don't taste good. You need acidity, you need richness, you need salt. There are different ways to bring different stuff in. You do need texture sometimes. You can go to some restaurants and it'll be very wet food, if you know what I mean, like very wet and lacking texture that becomes very monotonous. You need change through a tasting menu. Things that are familiar, things that are less familiar, things that are crispy, things that are not, So I think one of the most overlooked things is people young chefs don't taste their food.
Yeah.
And I know I'm generalising, which is not great, but that's the reality of it. They're concentrating on too many other things. They forget to taste it.
It boils back to that. You know when I said like Heston's thing is question everything.
Yeah.
Yours is like just make it delicious and like the emotional residue. And it's like you can get so bogged down in this kind of convoluted crap of like, it may look amazing, may have steam coming out of it. If it doesn't taste delicious, you have no memorable experience.
Yeah.
I think what did Osh say? It's like we're in the retail business, but our product is actually a feeling, an experience, which is then traded as a story.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing. That is insane. And this is...
So that's the crab salad with bitter leaves, apple and citrus. So again, find the best crab that we can get. And so, crab from Portland shellfish.
When you're tasting something, talk me through, like, when you put some food in your mouth or a dish, before we started, you had that soup. The soup came down. and you're like, I've just got to quickly taste this. When you put a spoon or a fork of food in your mouth,
Yeah.
how are you computing? Like, what's the ash machine doing to work out whether it's good or what it needs? Like, talk me through that.
I think you've got when a customer eats a dish, they're eating a dish as a whole, right? Mm-hmm. So when there's a start and a finish, sometimes depends how you play. There's no start and finish here because it's sort of three things that are the same. But sometimes you'll have naturally what's in front of you. You'll start there and you'll eat through a dish. So you can change that experience as you eat through from start to finish. For example, that doesn't apply to that. That doesn't apply to that because it's the same all the way through. Yeah. So you see here, for example, we put blobs of mustard on here so that each mouthful is slightly different and you get a little bit more of that, a little bit more of that. So it becomes multi-dimensional in its flavour delivery, acidity from the onion, the little pops of the cornichons. For example, if we cut this really, really small on top, it becomes a very flat experience in terms of
you cut
the pickled onion and the cornichon, right?
Yeah.
And I spread the same amount of mustard over the whole thing. I've homogenized everything to a small thing. When you have bigger bursts and chunkier things, you get more of these things.
Yes.
So when you
it's like fireworks of flavor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, truffle can be amazing when it's really, really thin, if that's what you're trying to achieve with something as a flatter experience that's more consistent. But if you really want impact, you leave it really chunky so that you bite into it sometimes.
Yes.
See what I mean?
Yes.
So with the soup, for example, I was just checking that it's really boring actually. The packagette broke and we're testing another machine as well that does the same job. Turns out it does a better job, it looks like. And checking texture, temperature, seasoning. And I said to him, a little bit more seasoning in there and we're back on track.
So the salt and the seasoning brings it alive. Like, talk me through that.
It just gives you a fuller flavour. It just maximises flavour. But if you too much, it's just going to be salty, and you're going to be like, oh, it's not pleasant. So it's a very hard thing teaching people to season.
Yeah.
But that's the joy of cooking, really. It's about the most rewarding thing is being able to pass this on to other people to do it as well as you, or if not better than you can do. That's the ultimate thing for me as a chef in the kitchen. Steak's just coming back, so we can talk about this.
This is what I think Osh said on the first one.
Yeah.
So the suet pudding. I think he was saying to what he says, like, me and Charlie sat down. I'm like, what are we going to get to the food? And he goes, this suet pudding was kind of like had burned into their heads.
Yeah.
It was so memorable. Back to this delicious memorability. Talk me through this.
Yeah. So, Osh, I met with Osh the first time, and he said, we love the oxtail and kidney pudding at the Heinz Head. Would we be able to, put this on the menu? I said, well, why don't we approach it slightly differently and say, well, we're not reinventing the wheel here, and I'm sure everyone's going to be like, whoa, you didn't invent this. Why don't we make something synonymous for here? So beef is a massive part of the DNA of this restaurant. So beef cheek and Guinness or beef cheek and red wine, but make it our own, and really all of the development from here, they were like, well, that could work actually, that'd be really good. And then I ended up joining as co-founder. We set about the menu development, and I could have turned up 6 weeks before, opened the recipe book and just made everything. But actually we invested a year of time and money in the development kitchen. I had another guy working with me called Ev. And every single recipe, from béarnaise sauce to gravy, to the peas with this, the way we do our duck fat chips, the pastry, the filling, the sauce, everything was from scratch. Now that is quite a commitment, So we did spend probably 2 months planning and about 10 months in the kitchen. So you've got a year of development for what is quite simple looking food. So in here we've got beef cheeks. We've also got the little... we call them beef fingers, which are in between the beef ribs of the aged beef from downstairs. Braised, gravy, onion and carrot, and then literally traditional sort of style gravy Nothing poncy, just all about flavour.
Super simple.
Nice, fatty pastry.
Well, these are like famous in northern, not this specifically, but the suet pudding is like a northern chippy thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they're very sort of common. Yeah, amazing. Thanks, Sash. Amazing.
Thank you so much.
You know, it's food for the people. It's, you know, this on a cold day is.
Oh my God.
It's like the ultimate, like, yeah, get in there, and it's the texture of the pastry, and of course you steam these in the oven.
And what's in the actual pastry then? Because it's not.
So it's flour and beef suet and seasoning, essentially.
Right, and suet is
beef fat.
Oh wow.
So you end up with this lovely sort of soft.
Oh my God.
Slightly fluffy layered pastry. You know, you can see it sort of, as you cook it, it just sort of puffs, but it's not puff pastry, you know?
That's absolutely insane.
Rich, and there's little dice of bone marrow in there, and you know, rich and delicious.
So rich. So delicious.
And we've got the duck fat chips. We peel and hand cut all of these, and then we literally we make these overnight now. We have a night shift. And then the beef downstairs, we've got George and Stan. We take the beef in on day 5 to 8 from slaughter as the primal. So is your 5-bone forerib of beef, which is your rib eyes and your beef chops, and then whole loins, where you get your T-bones and your wing ribs from. So we use wing rib for Sunday roast. And then we have T-bones cut into T-bone steaks. So downstairs is 5 to 6 weeks worth of beef.
Wow.
There's a lot of beef down there. Have you seen it?
No, I don't think I've actually seen it. We'll go after.
You should. You should cut that into the thing, because it is.
I can get Rich
mega.
To do this is just insane. And you like how's this style of cooking sort of changed your oh my God. Oh, yeah. Just appreciate that for a sec. Fucking hell. That's so good.
Then make sure you get some béarnaise and.
Oh my God. And this is all coming from where do the cows come from?
So all from Scotland.
Yeah.
Mostly Angus. But Charlie's founder of Flatiron restaurants, and so his beef connections are incredible. His knowledge on beef is amazing.
Is that similar? Is beef sort of the same approach to coffee in that sort of level of detail?
Yeah, it's about building relationships with people that have enough volume and throughput to make that natural selection. So if you just rewind back to the Ballet thing, right?
Yeah.
9,000 down to 12. That 12, maybe 5 might make it through to the last 2 years of school. This many cattle going through the abattoir. This many have the marbling that we want, into muscular marbling that you see in the meat.
Yeah.
The right size and the right genetic. It's all about genetics with beef. But it's until you start cutting the animal open, you really see what that spec is. So if you don't have the volume, you can't get the pick of the crop. Do you know what I mean?
And Charlie's got the access to the...
It's amazing relationships with people that see where it goes, see the care that we take. And, people love being part of something that, commercially it's nothing to the big beef suppliers in the world. But actually it's a bit of a passion project, and they're really proud that their beef is here.
Yeah.
We had one of the guys from the abattoir down that runs it, and he said, I've never seen it before, ever, where you've got like 65 people on the cutting room floor going, nah, yeah, that one's good for Devonshire. No.
Really?
And this is where social media is really important, because they've probably not been down here for dinner, they've not been in here, but they can see the traction and the appreciation and the whole hype, if you want to call it hype, or, the popularity. So even people on the cutting room floor are really proud that they're picking stuff for here. And we're just like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And he'd never seen this before, the guy from the abattoir.
One of the things Osh said is that the hype can be sometimes a burden. Like, talk to me about that from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm probably a little bit more accustomed to it, having been at the Fat Duck and then dinner. when people come through the door, they are incredibly excited most of the time. They have expectations from whatever media they've been looking at, printed, social media, TV, and you have to deliver against that. And everyone's expectation is slightly different. We have different levels. Some people are really easily pleased. Others are bloody hard to please. You know, some people you can never please, occasionally. So I'm very used to it. You can only do what you can do, and I think we're very honest. We look at everything, like every great restaurateur or chef. Like you look at everything. How can I do this better? How can I make this more consistent? How can I make this have more impact? How can I minimize the opportunity for a mistake to be made, whether it's in the cooking or the preparation or anything, you know? So if you think like that, you can only do what you can do. Do you know what I mean?
What are the changes you've made? Does the dishes look the same, but it's like stuff we wouldn't even notice as the consumer, but like from your side, what have you changed?
Sometimes ingredients, supply chain is everything.
Really?
You know, when you're dealing in volume, you know, cooking 550, 600 people a day, you've really got to work hard on your supply. You know, it's no good me working with a guy that, you know, can supply me carrots for 20 covers a week. There's no point.
Yeah.
I need the best tasting carrot, the kilos and kilos and kilos that we use for the buttered carrots, or, you know, the bacon here, you know, Brett Graham's Iberico, reared in Shropshire. How can we could just buy bacon, but it's not our bacon. Bacon sandwich for the bar menu, actually, it's here on the back of the beer mat. We make the bread, we make the butter, we make the bacon. You choose red or brown sauce.
Amazing.
You know, a simple bacon sandwich.
What do you think's the difference? So, sorry to interrupt, but
it's all right.
So Rory Southern, I know you like. I think you've seen some of his videos. Yeah. So he came on the podcast, and obviously we only talk about food for like 3 hours. Restaurants and stuff. So it's just like I love food. And he was saying he wants to open he said he wants, listening to coffee actually, says, if I was to open a coffee shop, in Paddington Station, I would create one called Flat Whites or Fuck Off. And it's basically like you do one thing well.
Yeah.
You don't have the big menu. It's super simple. Kind of not just
do
one thing really well. Then he said the other restaurant he wanted to. We were talking about how would you create a Polish Nando's, which got a bit weird. And then we also started talking about. He goes, I want to open a restaurant called Bacon Sandwich, which only does. And he goes, I think he called it gratuitous perversity, which is like I don't know what that actually means, and they would only do brown sauce and champagne. So the only drink you get is champagne. And
really?
You get, wow. And he goes into, I can't remember it all, but he goes into the sort of the marketing genius of why this would work. What do you think is like, when you're putting brown sauce on a bacon sarnie versus red sauce, like how's that affecting the way you eat, taste things and enjoy things? And which one do you go with, I suppose?
It's what you like. I mean, to be honest, I was always ketchup only. But then when we did a restaurant for the airport called Perfectionist Cafe.
Called what?
Perfectionist Cafe. So it was all based on fast food, but actually benefited from being cooked really fast and served really fast, right? So we did breakfast, we did wood-fired pizza, nitro ice cream parlour and a deli type thing, and burgers and fish and chips.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what I was going to say.
Brown sauce or red sauce?
Oh, yeah, brown sauce. So we had ketchup and mayonnaise, back bacon, unsmoked, smoked, streaky, crispy. So we built this multi-textural sort of bacon sandwich. But here...
Sorry. So what did you have on the bacon side of things? You had two types of bacon.
Yeah, so we had unsmoked back bacon.
Yeah.
Smoked streaky that was cooked crispy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Textures, yeah.
Mayo and ketchup.
Interesting. Mayo, yeah. What about butter as well?
Oh, yeah, butter, obviously. Yeah, butter.
Yeah.
But here, what I tend to do now, as I say, no sauce, but I'll put it in myself. And I'll have red and brown either side.
Yeah.
Because it just works that way. You know, I start with the red sauce and then end with brown sauce.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just because I'm probably weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I sometimes put a bit of sriracha in a bacon sarnie, which is probably blasphemous. But
you know what? If that's how you like it, that's how you like it. And if people want to put milk and God knows what else in the coffee, if that's how you want it to be, That's
What is your favourite way? I'm just going to give this to Rich. What's your favourite way to drink your coffee?
How to get your challenger brand into more supermarkets and increase your current distribution in half the time. Range reviews are happening right now, right this millisecond. Sainsbury's, Waitrose, Tesco, Ocado, Co-op, all looking for new banging challenger brands. Don't miss this range review and have to wait another 6 months. It's long. Don't lose precious shelf space to your competitors. Don't let your buyer pick another brand just because you didn't have a Grand Slam deck. North Star Category Management help you create banging supermarket pitch decks so good that buyers find it impossible to say no to. Challenger brands like Perfect Ted, Trip, Bulbing Co, Dash all love North Star. Look, I am so confident in North Star transforming your brand. We've got an exclusive Hungry offer. Your first month for free. Yes, free. Plus, we're going to give you a free 30-minute consultancy session to see how your brand is currently performing in category. Click the link in the show notes to book your consultancy session and thank me later.
Yes, sorry. The best way to drink a coffee is
Well, how I drink coffee, it's not the best way.
for
I'm a
you,
purist,
Yeah.
I think, a lot of the time. And I like espresso or I like black filter. I'm not really a milky coffee kind of guy, but 90% of the population drink it with milk, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
You know, we're not preaching and say you can't be putting milk in this and this and this. How you like it is how you like it.
Yeah.
You want to put ice in your rosé? Crack on.
Yeah.
That's how you like it. I don't.
Yeah.
I just serve it chilled enough.
Yeah, this goes back to the empathy that we were talking about right at the beginning.
Yeah.
We're going to get onto these two things. One thing I'm just obsessed with history, and I think it would be remiss of me not to talk about your time at dinner and not necessarily like what you were creating, but I just want to go into the history side of things. I just think that's just so fucking fascinating. I really believe I think who was saying to me I was watching my mate do a podcast actually the other day with the All Saints founder.
Oh yeah.
Which is super interesting. Actually links to Forgotten.
His son used to work here actually.
Oh really?
Yeah.
So he's using he's now set up a new brand that is sustainable. Does actually link to Forgotten this. And he was saying the future lives in the past.
Yeah.
And which I just love. That's a great little kind of nugget of, deliciousness. And I'd love to go back to you did this whole thing where you just read loads about the whole history of food. If we were to walk out of here and say the 1300s in Soho, like what would it look like? What were people eating? Like what were we doing as human beings?
Well, I think first and foremost, how you ate and how you shared eating was a form of entertainment and also showing off your wealth and your status.
This is in the 300s, 1300s.
13, 14, 1500s. I mean, to be honest, even to the modern day, I'm going to go to a 3-star tonight because I'm loaded and I know what I'm talking about. Or, do you see what I mean? Or I'm going to go and eat in that super expensive restaurant because I can. I think how people ate, you had this rich and this poor thing. So the earlier you go back to a certain extent, chefs were using ways of using up food because there was no refrigeration apart from the way that they used to put food in the ground and have rooms underneath and keep food cold. But you basically had a lot of off flavors in things. So like wine, for example, it might be white wine one day, it's completely oxidized, doesn't really taste very good. So they start adding other stuff to it and it becomes red wine that's sort of flavored with other stuff so that it becomes palatable again. And I think food was very much your chef would go to you would go to another household and then you'd come back and you'd describe to your chef what you had and he'd write down what we now know as recipes. But if you open my computer and look at a recipe, it's got weights and measures and stuff. Theirs is like a small handful into 3 buckets of this. Well, there's no precision or anything. These were just reminders on how people just reminded themselves or passed on to the next cook how these people like to eat in their own home.
And this is the high status, high wealthy people.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got travel. So exotic ingredients coming back. And if I've got a big country house, I can have, a greenhouse with little walls that were beds where I can put hot embers in underneath to warm the soil up so I can grow things that would grow in a hot country in England.
Yeah.
So if you go to a large stately home, you see pineapples on the gateposts, like stone pineapples. Pineapples they used to rent them out in the Victorian times.
Oh my God, it's mad how much food, how intertwined with status food is. And I think there's a great book that guys have actually been on the podcast called The Status Game. And it's like how everything in life we're trying to do is to have some form of status. Three Michelin stars is status. And again, this is sort of another Rory thing, but I think he was saying like food, like I think in the olden days, if we're talking about them, apparently lobster was a really like a pauper's food. It wasn't
same as oysters.
And oysters.
Yeah.
And that just shows, but if they suddenly get status, then suddenly, like I always think, is caviar actually nice? Is it, or do people think it's nice because it's high status food? What's your take on status and food?
I love caviar, for example.
Yeah.
But I don't love all caviar.
Sure.
It's got to taste nice. It can't just be salty texture. It's got to have some sort of flavour. But I think food played a massive part in people's social standing and status and showing off. So the use of sugar in savoury dishes, if I use sugar all the time, it was incredibly rare back then. So I would be incredibly wealthy if I was, sugar sandwich, for example. I mean, we don't eat those anymore. I'm sure some people do. But sugar now, in its baddest form, is refined beyond its original state and is not that great for you, So things change and evolve over many, many years. But we spent, Heston, myself, a couple of others, we spent years reading at the National Library, working with historians such as Polly Russell or Ivan Day.
What do they teach you about that?
So they are food historians, and they are unbelievable encyclopedias of storytelling and making it relevant. I can understand what people were doing. Around the 1600s, the amount of labour that was going into these massive banquets for the Lord and Lady, the King and Queen. They would have maybe, the biggest one I saw was about 185 courses.
What?
Types of dish, right?
Yeah.
But one of those 185 would be, 12 geese roasted and stuffed. That's one of the 185. They'd have 3 swans. They would have a whole pig. They'd have so much food you could not believe. They would sit at the top table and they would be paraded through. There'd be massive tables with all their dignitaries, and getting further away from the table is you're less important. And then all of this food would come by. They can't eat everything, but they would pick and choose because they were the ones at the top table. Then everything else got put down.
Wow.
But I mean, the amount of work in these things, 1500s, you'd have courtyards full of chefs that, I'm sure people were dying and, they just carry on. But they were more lavish than you could ever imagine it being today.
So was food back then almost like the status of having a Ferrari or...
Yeah, it's entertainment. It was, then you'd have your other entertainment, your jesters, your musicians, your probably dancers, interest in stuff like that. So there was nothing else. This was the best thing that you could do.
Wow. What are some other crazy stories or like underrated learnings from that time, immersing yourself in that period?
There were some horrendous ones. Like there was a couple where I think it was a goose where they would pluck the goose alive, right? And then they'd brush it with a mixture of sort of almost like a molasses kind of mixture, and then put the head underneath the wing of the bird and rock it to sleep, put it in the middle of the table, and then put 2 cooked birds with it. And when the person that was entertaining went to cut the bird that was actually asleep, it would get up and run down the table, knocking all the wine goblets over and everything.
Wow.
Pretty barbaric kind of stuff, So yeah, it's wouldn't survive in today's world. That's for sure.
Did you ever have a lonely period on this whole amazing journey of yours?
Yeah, a lot of the time, sometimes when you don't have many people above you, sometimes it is hard and you have really bad times. I know when there was a certain period where I didn't feel like I was particularly creative. And I know it's going to sound really stupid telling you this. And I actually worked with a guy on
It's a bit closer, mate. Yeah.
putting myself in the right frame of mind to be creative, because I was thinking that I wasn't creative, and that was damaging my performance in creating stuff and doing stuff, right? Because all I could think about was, I don't feel like
When
I'm
you say
creative.
you weren't creative, as in like what the dishes you were coming up with, all the ideas weren't as good as the other
Sometimes,
people?
yeah,
or...
you know, like, I'm sure it's the same for anyone who creates stuff, like a singer-songwriter. You can't just go, right, tomorrow I want 3 songs. Well, I know I need 3 songs, so I've got an album that I need to write.
Yeah.
Actually, I haven't got it. I don't have it. I don't see what it is I'm trying to imagine. And so I worked with this performance coach, and he put me onto this very mathematically precise, I think it was Mozart. And he said, right, what I want you to do is I want you to listen to this music, and I want you to go out for a walk. And there's studies done between people being asked to come up with ideas by looking at a subject straight ahead, right? And fixed on that. When they're asked certain things, find the solution. And then others that had to follow a subject from left to right, like it was a moving thing. And the one that was moving and more sort of visually stimulated, because you're doing other things, this is a bit above my pay grade in terms of what's happening in here.
Yeah.
They became better at ideas, imagining other things. So they said, right, I want you to listen to this music. I want you to go outside at lunchtime or whenever, 20 minutes. Just want you to walk and just take in what it is. We know now this is like meditation or mindfulness and things, but that really wasn't in our psyche back then so much, right? So I went out for a walk, and I'm like, right, I'm listening to music, I'm looking around, I'm walking through a field and make sure I don't get run over on the road. I'm not coming up with anything else. So I'm like, well, this is not working. And then after about a week, I consciously go out of the development kitchen, I do my walk, and I come back and I go, Christ, I didn't even really concentrate on crossing the road. I wasn't even thinking about anything. But I've actually thought about it a lot, but I've not concentrated on thinking. It's about putting your mind in the right frame of mind to allow yourself to be creative. If I'm stood in the kitchen on the pass or on any section trying to think of ideas while we're delivering, probably not the best thing.
So you know what we were talking about at the beginning about the antenna to God, and God to me is creativity, right? Mm-hmm. In what Quentin Tarantino is saying. But I think it was almost like that walk and that Mozart was almost like shining or lengthening your antenna, right? And I think you do. They call it writer's block. You can get sort of muffled, and you don't have that sort of that reaching to that creative force. And funny enough, the walk thing's so like just so true. I think, what was it, Darwin every single day would have this exactly the same walk he would do down to his thing, and he'd like go past the exact same trees. And so when he got there, he was in this creative mindset. And Rick Rubin, though, I'll send you the audio, but you'll love it. He says distraction is not procrastination. I think a lot of people, like, if you're stood at the kitchen thinking, well, I can't go on a fucking walk, like I've got to get these 2 dishes together. It's like, actually going on a walk and distracting yourself is not procrastinating. And it's just like, that is the creative. And then so what, you listening to Mozart, you're going on these walks, and when you got back into the kitchen, like, was it like a flood of ideas, or how did you get it back?
No, it's just I think it's just about being mindful that you need to put yourself in the right frame of mind. And then I started cycling and to get fit predominantly. And I just found that when you're on a bike, you can't do anything else, right? You've got to concentrate on staying alive on the bike because you're on the road. But also, there's so much you're thinking about. You're thinking about the pedals. Like, you just get immersed in it. And before you know it, you do 45 minutes. I used to go the long way to work I live 3 miles from the development kitchen, but I do 25 miles on the way to work. And by the time you got there, you feel amazing. You've got everything in order that you need to do during the day, and you just go, right, this is really easy today.
Yes.
Off I go. And you've not really set out to get on the bike to think about those things. It just happens because I don't know, it's just something magical happens. It's amazing. I can't obviously ride to Soho every day, but some days like today, I'll drive in because I'm in my own little space. I'm not sat on the train listening to someone else's conversation.
That's why I drive everywhere. So I'm actually trying to do more walks now because I became a fat fuck over Christmas, but in January at least. But distraction is not procrastination is beautiful. Let's talk about this, and then we'll wrap this up, mate. But this has been, I absolutely love this.
So this is really cool. So I've worked with this guy called Simon for many years on different projects. He makes cocktails for people, pre-batch cocktails, fresh. They're amazing. They're like where you've got maybe labour constraints or personnel constraints. Pre-batching cocktails, even at the highest level bars, like 3 Sheets up here, they will prepare like a chef, so that it can deliver drinks fast. But actually, the precision in your liquid and drinks is going to be really consistent, and you can do things that you can't just mix together in a jigger and pop in a glass, right? So you're making your own style of mixtures. So we
sort of like pre-made, so that when it gets busy, a bit like the mise en place, but like
exactly,
drinks,
and you can get something much better and consistent by preparing yourself to deliver those things. So anyway, he uses 5 tons of citrus a week in his factory for juicing, orange, lemon, lime. We were looking at loads of brands. We'd worked on a coffee liqueur for Artisan. So because I'd made cocktails with him before for an airport restaurant, I went to him for like an espresso martini mix. So we'd been working on that. We won some awards in great taste and stuff. And then we were looking at all these amazing brands on the shelf of alcohol and spirits. But some of them are really bad to drink. They're not great quality. Great branding, great store. The whole thing's amazing. Really successful as well. But actually, when you taste them, you just go, it's not that great, is it? And so we thought, well, actually, in parallel, can we use these peels? Because they were going to anaerobic digestion and not really wasted, but peel is a great thing.
Anaerobic digestion
is for food waste that gets turned into energy.
Okay, yeah.
Right, for electric.
Yeah.
And so we do a double extraction on lemon, lime, and orange separately in sugar first. That creates a syrup. Then it goes into alcohol, and we treat that with ultrasonic in an ultrasonic bath. So you do a double extraction, 1 into sugar, 1 into alcohol. Then we have little raspberry bits that don't make it into punnets from English farms. We use that juice. We extract botanicals, your traditional bitters in an Amaro style. So this is an aperitivo. So I'll give you a commercial.
What does an aperitivo mean?
Aperitivo means
sunset or something like that.
It's like what you would have. It's like an Aperol spritz, as in a style of aperitivo.
Yeah.
Right? There's lots of aperitivos out there.
You know Betivo, the brand Betivo?
I do, yeah, it's good.
Have you met Sam, actually?
No, never met.
You'd get on really well with him because he's like obsessed with all this stuff as well.
Yeah.
If you want.
And so this is a commercial one, right?
Yeah.
Just have a little...
When you say commercial one?
I say rather large, quite cheap, and lots of, let's say, lots of fake stuff in there, right? And E-numbers and preservatives and stuff like that. I'm not actually going to taste it because I've tasted it so many times.
Yeah, so sorry. This is the what brand is this? We will take it out.
It's the big one.
Yeah, begins with an A.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't put that in.
Yeah. No. I'm joking.
But so we've created a brand called Forgotten, and it's all very sustainable. So we launched this here. We actually make the ultrasonic aperitivo, and we make a high fidelity triple sec. So we're taking on brands that are old and dusty, like Cointreau, for example.
Yeah.
Cointreau is dried peel, sugar, and alcohol. Yeah. Whereas this is about extracting oils and real things from the orange, right? And we launched this here. We are in recycled or collected Bordeaux bottles from Devonshire because we launched here. So we took these back to the factory, sterilised them. We've got a brand here that's built with designers from cosmetic and perfume space. So we want to be very visually different to most things that are on the shelf.
Mate, because I'd seen this on Instagram before I even knew it was linked to you.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, that's fucking sick. Because I love just the the way it's typed out without the
Yeah.
OR in it. Forgotten.
So that becomes our word mark when,
Yeah.
you know, Nike didn't mean anything back in the day, right?
Yeah.
I know I'm using probably one of the world's famous brands, but we spend a lot of time working with the right people developing the brand. But this is designed not only to be just a spritz. This can be in tonic. It can be, my partner says, bartender's ketchup, you know, because what it brings into a recipe, you can't get from this. So this you'll only use for its primary use. Put it in a spritz. This becomes something else. So smell this. So this has got rhubarb root, gentian. You've got a little bit of raspberry. You've got all that citrus. That gives you your bitters. So your good bitter. You know, like a Negroni.
Yeah.
Campari based. That's good bitterness. You can have really burnt coffee that's bad bitterness. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can have really well roasted coffee. It's bitter, but it's a good bitter. It's smooth bitterness, not rough. So this one will taste completely different to this one. So it's all about low weight bottles.
Oh my days.
450 grams instead of 750 grams. So you save 4 kilos on a case to move it from A to B. Reclaimed cork for our corks that are in here. There's no cap. There's nothing extra in this brand that doesn't need to be there. Same as the food, same as the restaurant. Flavor first. Liquid.
Wait, it's like a sort of carousel of flavor in your gob. But yeah, how are you doing that? It's like, that's it. You know what I said at the beginning? Fireworks.
Yeah.
It's like a phonetic sort of firework that's going on in your gob. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah. You've got natural oils in there.
Magic.
It's all natural. There's no preservatives, no additives, no nothing. It's about real ingredients that are extracted with technology and imagination and thought to do something that others haven't done.
Yeah.
And everything that it stands for, it's about inspiring a bit of creativity. So we lead, when we take it to people to try, great barman, restaurants, hotels, to say, look, let's taste it in this format, but actually this is going to inspire your creativity. I think we actually put it on here somewhere.
How will that inspire creativity, do you think?
What that does to you when you drink it, when someone is a mixologist or a drinks person, they think, I want to bring what this brings, for example, into a drink. Oh, I know what I can use. I can use Forgotten Aperitivo.
Yeah.
It's not just a spritz.
Yeah.
I'm going to use a bit of that because that's going to give me those oils. It's going to give me that acidity.
What's the difference between, I'm going to ask some really stupid questions here, but what's the difference between approach to making drinks versus food?
None.
There's no difference.
None, really.
It's the same textures, flavours.
Yeah, multi-dimensional. The more multi-dimensional and what's the word? More complex you can make things. How they change through drinking a drink, it will dilute out slightly. It might have something. I saw a clever drink the other day that Max did at Three Sheets, and his bramble is in a little tumbler. Square piece of glass. It's got a sort of crater out of the middle of it, and the bramble is clear, and the fruit part of the bramble is in this little crater. So every time you take a sip of the drink, a little bit more of it comes out into the drink. Right?
Yes.
So it becomes more of a bramble as you go down. So it starts as one thing. The experience in flavour changes the more you drink the drink to the end.
How important is temperature in food, like the hot and cold and stuff?
Yeah, hot and cold. We did a drink at the Fat Duck that was essentially 2 fluid gels made with iced tea. One was super hot, low acidity. One was super cold, high acidity. So you're using acidity and temperature, but they have the same viscous texture. You put a little divider down in the glass, pour the hot and the cold one in at the same time, take the thing out the middle, and then you'd have hot one side, cold the other, and it blew people's minds.
That's crazy.
And then you turn it that way, and it's hot. You turn it that way, and it's cold. Go back to the thing, it's in the middle.
Same drink in the middle.
Same flavour.
That's crazy.
High acidity, low acidity, hot and cold.
Balances it out.
And
what are other dishes like that you...
Temperature ones. Well, you got the nitro poached green tea sour, which came in a tall glass. It was just a foam out of an espuma, but it was, lime and green tea and the right acids that we put in there to create saliva, which stimulates your appetite. So it's the first thing you have. A bit like aperitivo. This has got similar properties, right? So you've got the acidity, you've got good saliva in there now, and you're like, your body is now wanting more. It wants the next thing. So we took the foam from the glass that you used to eat with a spoon, and then when we got the first liquid nitrogen in, Heston started putting everything in it, like anything that you can imagine went in this thing to try and, break things. What were the limits? There were no limits because you're not afraid to fail. You give it a go. We then pour a little dome out onto a spoon, knock it into the liquid nitrogen, which is minus 196 Celsius. You're kind of poaching it, but you're freezing it from the outside. The inside's still foam. You pick it up, you put it in. It's insanely cold, but it just evaporates. And the delivery of that acidity that you normally got from eating through the glass just came in one. So your impact was way more. Plus you get a bit of nitrogen out of the nose like a dragon.
How important is colour and, firstly, colour in food?
Massively important. If we didn't make this red, for example, with natural things, I'll just put more.
Another one of those, mate.
I'm going to show you what I mean.
I have to do a few more of these colour experiments. We'll get nice and squiffy.
So if I just use water for this, right? I don't want it really, really fake in colour. But what I want is a really nice blush. So that now, to me, looks really inviting as a colour. If I've got something like that, that's telling me that is not... It's too fake for me.
Where's that? Is that a psychological, is that literally red as... Because red is the fear, colour of danger. What on a psychological basis, where's this coming from? The colour?
This looks friendly to me and delicious, and it's going to be sweet and round and just like a pleasure. This, I'm thinking... That's still pretty vibrant. It looks pretty fake.
Yeah.
But if this is too, for example, if I really dilute it down, my perception now is that's not going to be as sweet and as round as I think yours is going to be.
Yes.
And it's colour tone. I think it's called...
How can you use sharp...
Synesthesia, I think it is.
Yeah.
So if I say to you, what is... Heston did loads of stuff on this. What colour is acid?
Well, I'm going to think of lime greens or yellows.
There you go. What is, what is sweet?
I think more of the fruity colours. So red, to be honest.
There you go. So people see shapes and colours as taste and flavour. So if you said describe, and there's a thing called, it was called Kiki and Booba. So it's, does a word sound kiki or booba? Booba is sweet and round and round in shape, and the kiki is really jagged like a spark or a firework.
Oh, as in the word in terms of how you describe the food, or as in?
Yeah, so you say booba, like round and friendly.
Yeah.
Kiki, sharp and spiky. So if you said, I don't know, strawberry, it's probably more over the booba for me. But all of our perception is slightly different.
Yeah.
So where you are on the scale.
Rory talks about a bloke in Oxford University who will basically get a lemon.
Yeah.
He probably wanted a job at the Fat Duck, to be honest.
We probably worked with this guy, I think.
Yeah. He would get a lemon and he would make a lemon sorbet, but it would taste like strawberries. And it was like that. He told me to get him on the podcast. I haven't actually gone around to it yet, but it's fascinating. One thing, what about spice? Why humans are obsessed with spice? Because it's quite a masochistic thing to be like.
Yeah.
I've always wondered that. So I'm asking some really dumb questions.
Yeah, there's a specific part of the brain that is funny enough, on one of the Perfection series, I actually ended up, because I didn't have any...
series was just for context.
Heston's...
Yeah, it was a TV series.
It was something to do with chili, right?
Yeah.
Because I was the only one that didn't have metal plates or some sort of replaced body part. I ended up in an MRI scanner being tube-fed 3 tubes in the, proper head in first, all the way, dead still, had 3 small tubes, and they were all connected to syringes. And what they did over 15 minutes, it's actually quite funny, is put a mixture of 5 seconds of water, 5 seconds of sugar syrup, and then 5 seconds of chili oil, like hot.
What, through your nozzle? Or?
So I've got imagine 3 wires going into the wherever they sit to do the MRI.
Yeah.
I'm in there, strapped.
But where's it? Yeah.
Tubes in my mouth, 3 tubes, right?
Yeah.
They do 5 seconds of water, 5 seconds of sweet syrup, and then 5 seconds chili oil. And they were monitoring the parts of my brain that lit up when each one was pushed in separately. But what was really interesting was that the chili just got hotter and hotter and hotter. And I'm thinking, well, they've loaded the thing with sort of mild, little bit hotter, little bit hotter, little bit hotter. It was all the same. But the cumulative effect of this chili in my brain, and little parts of the brain will heat up, and that's your pain and pleasure part of the brain. So it's bloody hot, but you keep going, don't you? Because you bloody love it, but God, Christ, it's hot. And you only want to stop once.
There's also actually, there's kind of a bit of pleasure in the pain of...
Yeah. I mean, people take that to extremes, right? But in terms of food, you don't stop eating that really amazing food. Like David Thompson, or if you go to Kiln up the road, the Thai way of using peppers and spices is amazing.
Have you been to Speedboat?
No.
Mate, that's insane.
I need to go there.
It's like really fruity.
Yeah.
It's like it's so fucking spicy, but it's fruity. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
Like you're just eating it. You're like, I went there. I took 2 massive investment guys there for to potentially talk about sponsoring the podcast, but it was stupid because like I was trying to eat, but I was having a sweat attack. Being like, mate, like, what are you up to this week? Like, no, it was awful. But the food's absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
What final thing? What about plates? Like, what I know we've got like a really simple plate. What we're doing at the Devonshire.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you go to some restaurants and the plate is just kind of what role does that play in the dish? I
mean, it can have a lot of a role, or it can have none of a role like ours. But it's all depends what you like. But I do think it's like when you go to a really trendy cafe or a restaurant and they've got really like rough. The texture of things or the weight of stuff will have an effect on how you perceive things to be. So if I gave you some really light cutlery, it's going to feel pretty cheap, right? But if I gave you good 3/4 weight cutlery, that's a lovely assured quality feel. It does transpond to what you're eating. As long as the food is good, it can't be great cutlery, crap food. You're not going to go, oh, this is amazing. But actually, when all of these things all line up together, it becomes greater than the sum of its parts. So you don't want really rough plates. Well, I don't personally. Some might. I don't want that awkward, scrapey, like you get with really textured stuff. But then you might want, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. You might want texture on half of a bowl or a plate and smooth on the other. Depends what you're doing.
Yes. Ash, let's wrap that up. We've gone way over, but like I could go on for hours talking about this stuff, mate. But I've got an accountant to see and you've got people to see. But
no
mate,
worries.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And just so much in that. I think the main thing is the creativity and the discipline, and it's just the constant ebbing and flowing between those two states. But then it's all lynched around this thing of just empathy, making people happy. This sort of residual emotional experience. It's just it's insane.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, mate.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
That was sick.